Imagine working your whole life, showing up early, staying late, never complaining, only to be blamed for something you didn't do. And imagine realizing that one single moment could destroy everything you were fighting for. Keisha Vance had no idea that when the clock struck 7 p.m., her life was about to split into before and after. She wiped the sweat from her forehead, dark strands of hair clinging stubbornly to her skin beneath a faded work cap. Her legs burned. Her back throbbed from hours of bending, scrubbing, and lifting. Summit Health, one of the city's most elite private clinics, sparkled with luxury, but none of it ever belonged to her. And tonight, her shift wasn't over yet. Procedure Room 3 on the second floor still needed cleaning. Keisha pushed the door open with her shoulder, set her bucket down, and inhaled the sharp scent of antiseptic mixed with something far more expensive, designer perfume. The room gleamed under harsh white lights, polished equipment, plush chairs, machines worth more than she earned in a year. Every time she stepped into rooms like this, she felt like an intruder in someone else's world. She picked up her rag and began wiping the couch with practiced, mechanical movements. After 3 years at Summit Health, she knew every corner of the building better than most of the staff. She knew which stains never came out, which tiles creaked, and which supervisors looked for reasons to complain. But her mind wasn't on the room. It was on Maya. Her 8-year-old niece's face flashed through her thoughts, too thin, too brave for her age. Earlier that day, her neighbor had called. Maya's leg pain had returned. The surgery couldn't be delayed much longer. Keisha had done the math 100 times. $3,200 saved. $1,800 still missing. Every dollar mattered. Every shift mattered. Every mistake, real or imagined, could ruin everything. "Just a little more," she whispered under her breath. "We'll get there." Her thoughts drifted to her sister, Tasha, gone for 2 years now. No father, no other family, just Keisha. She had taken Maya in without hesitation, even when everyone warned her it would be too much. She had never regretted it. As Keisha wiped down the instrument table, the door suddenly slammed open. The sound made her flinch. Brenda Sterling. The head nurse stood there, arms crossed, heels clicking against the tile like warning shots. Her smile was thin, sharp, dangerous. "Haven't finished yet?" Brenda sneered. Keisha straightened immediately. "Almost, Miss Sterling, just 5 more minutes." Brenda let out a cold laugh. "With you, it's always 5 more minutes." Her eyes drifted across the room and locked onto the brand-new ultrasound machine. Before Keisha could react, it happened. The head nurse slammed into the machine. Time slowed. The equipment tipped, crashed to the floor, and shattered into pieces with a deafening sound that echoed through the room. Keisha screamed. Her heart slammed against her ribs. I didn't... Footsteps thundered in. Dr. Marcus Thorne, the clinic's chief physician, stormed inside, his face dark with fury. "What have you done?" he barked. Keisha tried to speak, tried to explain. The words refused to come. She hadn't touched it. She hadn't even been close. Brenda didn't hesitate. She pointed. "I warned her. She was careless." Keisha's jaw tightened. "No, you did this." But she knew better than to say it out loud. Dr. Thorne's voice was cold, final. "That machine was worth $25,000. You'll be fined $1,200 effective immediately." The room tilted. Half of Maya's surgery money gone in a sentence. Keisha swallowed hard, forcing the tears back. There was no one here to defend her, no one willing to listen. And as she gathered her things and walked out of Summit Health that night, one truth settled heavily in her chest. This wasn't an accident. It was the beginning of something much worse. Keisha believed the fine was the worst punishment she would face, but by the next morning, she would discover that Summit Health had already decided her fate. If you want to know what happens next and how one lie spirals into total injustice, make sure you're subscribed. This story is only getting darker. The cold cut through Keisha the moment she stepped outside the clinic. Snow drifted slowly from the dark sky, settling over the sidewalks like a thin, fragile promise that the world could start clean again. She pulled her coat tighter, her breath trembling in pale clouds. Inside her head, one sentence kept replaying. Sharp, cruel, impossible to escape. You'll be fined. Her fingers shook as she unlocked her phone. $3,200. That number had once felt like hope. Now it looked small, fragile. After the fine, it would barely be enough to keep Maya's surgery from slipping out of reach. The weight of it pressed down on her chest until it hurt to breathe. Keisha walked toward the bus stop, boots crunching against ice, each step heavier than the last. She thought about the nights she'd skipped dinner, the extra shifts, the way exhaustion had become normal. All of it had been for one goal: protect Maya. And now, because of a lie, it was unraveling. She stopped beneath a flickering streetlight. The tears came before she could stop them. Keisha hated crying in public, hated feeling exposed. But tonight, her strength had finally given out. She buried her face in her scarf, shoulders shaking as the cold and the fear swallowed her whole. "Please," she whispered into the empty street, "just give me one break." "Miss?" The voice startled her. Keisha looked up to see a tall man standing a few feet away. He wore a dark wool coat dusted with snow, his posture relaxed but alert. His expression wasn't curious or judgmental, just quietly concerned. "I'm Daniel. I work nearby. I noticed you'd been standing here for a while." "Keisha," she replied, surprising herself by answering. Normally, she avoided strangers. Tonight, something about him felt steady. Daniel glanced back toward the glowing clinic behind her. "Summit Health?" Her shoulders tensed. "Yeah." "Tough place," he said carefully, "especially if you're not wearing a lab coat." The words stung. She laughed bitterly. "Tell me about it." He hesitated, then added, "I don't strike me as someone who breaks expensive equipment." Her heart skipped. "You heard about that?" "I was inside earlier, meeting with Dr. Thorne." Her stomach dropped. "Of course you were." But then he spoke again, quieter this time. "I also saw what really happened." The world seemed to freeze. "What do you mean?" Keisha asked. "The nurse bumped the machine," Daniel said evenly. "Not you." Keisha's breath caught. Her pulse roared in her ears. Hearing it aloud, hearing someone else confirm it, made her knees feel weak. "Then why didn't you say anything?" she whispered. Daniel sighed. "Because places like that don't protect people like you, and I wasn't sure when the truth would matter." The bus headlights appeared through the snowfall, glowing closer. Keisha's mind raced. This stranger had just cracked open a door she thought was permanently sealed. "Why tell me now?" she asked. Daniel met her eyes. "Because timing changes everything." The bus hissed to a stop. Keisha stepped forward, then paused. "What does that mean?" Daniel's lips curved in a faint, knowing smile. "It means this isn't the last time we'll talk." The doors closed, the bus pulled away, and Keisha stood alone in the snow, heart pounding, one thought echoing louder than the cold. Who was Daniel, and why did it feel like her life had just shifted again? Keisha believed Daniel was just a witness, but by morning she would learn Daniel was connected to Summit Health in a way that could save her or destroy her completely. Sometimes the truth is right in front of you, but speaking it could cost you everything. The next morning, Keisha woke with a start, her phone vibrating on the nightstand. Gray light crept through the thin curtains, and for a brief second, she forgot everything. The fine, the broken machine, the stranger in the snow. Then reality slammed back like a fist to the chest. $1,200. The number repeated in her mind as she swung her legs over the edge of the bed. She padded to the kitchen, poured herself a cup of bitter instant coffee, and stared at the chipped countertop. Every sacrifice flashed before her eyes. Late nights, aching hands, missed weekends with Maya. All for nothing if she couldn't fix this. Speaking of Maya, Keisha's gaze drifted down the hallway. Her niece's door was slightly ajar, a soft nightlight casting a halo over her sleeping form. Maya's small leg was tucked awkwardly beneath her, her face peaceful despite the pain that would soon demand surgery. Keisha's chest constricted. I have to fix this. Somehow. I can't let her down. By the time Keisha arrived at Summit Health, the clinic felt colder than usual, as if the walls themselves were aware of the storm in her life. No sooner had she clocked in than Brenda Sterling appeared, clipboard in hand, lips pressed into a smug line. "Dr. Thorne wants to see you," she said, her tone dripping with faux civility. Keisha followed, each step a drumbeat of dread. She could feel her heart pounding in rhythm with her mounting fear. Inside the massive office, Dr. Marcus Thorne sat behind his polished desk, fingers steepled like a judge ready to pass sentence. "We've reviewed the incident," he began, voice cold. "And the fine stands. Payroll will deduct it over the next 2 months. 2 months? That meant Maya's surgery, her one chance at relief, would have to wait. Again. "Sir," Keisha said, steadying her voice, though the storm inside threatened to break free, "I didn't break that machine." Brenda scoffed, folding her arms. "You were alone in the room." "That's not true," Keisha replied, surprising herself with the boldness. "There was someone else there. A man. He saw what really happened." Dr. Thorne raised an eyebrow. "And this witness has a name?" Keisha hesitated. She only knew his first name, Daniel. "I don't know his last name," she admitted. Brenda's smirk widened. "Convenient." Dr. Thorne leaned back, dismissive. "Unless you have proof, this conversation is over." Then the office door opened. "I can provide proof." All eyes turned. Daniel stood in the doorway, calm, composed, a folded document in his hand. Tisha's chest hitched. He had come. "I'm Daniel Wright," he said evenly. "Board compliance consultant. I reviewed the safety footage last night." Brenda's confident smirk faltered. Dr. Thorne's voice grew tense. "Why wasn't I informed?" "The footage was scheduled to deletion. I intervened." He placed the document on Dr. Thorne's desk. "The video clearly shows Nurse Sterling knocking over the machine, not Miss Vance." Silence fell, thick as snow on the city streets. Brenda opened her mouth, then snapped it shut again. Dr. Thorne cleared his throat, uneasy. "We will review this," he said carefully, eyes darting to the footage. Daniel met Keisha's gaze, a silent reassurance passing between them. "This isn't over, but you're not alone anymore." Later, in the hallway, Keisha caught up with him. "You didn't have to do that," she said, voice low. "Yes, I did," he replied simply. "Because if people like you stay quiet, nothing ever changes." She swallowed hard. "Why help me?" Daniel paused. "Because I've seen what happens when good people are crushed by systems that don't care." Before he could ask more, he added, voice almost a whisper, "Be careful, Keisha. Speaking the truth, it comes with a price." That night, Keisha stared at her bank account, the pending deductions still looming. The fine hadn't disappeared, the fight wasn't over, but for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel completely alone. And somewhere deep in her heart, a spark of hope flickered, because maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of a new chapter, not just for her, but for Maya, too. The storm isn't over yet. Keisha has proof now, but Summit Health isn't done with her, and Daniel's involvement could put both of them in the crosshairs. Will justice win, or will the system crush them both? Sometimes the people who help you can also put you in danger without even realizing it. Kesha tossed and turned in her small apartment that night, but sleep refused to come. Her mind raced. Brenda Sterling's smirk, Dr. Thorne's icy stare, the $1,200 fine hanging over her like a guillotine, and Daniel Wright, the man who had rescued her, yet carried an air of warning that made her pulse quicken. Morning came too soon. Her hands still ached from scrubbing floors, wrapped in faintly smelling gauze. The reminders of yesterday's humiliation burned into her skin. Maya's laughter cut through the tension, a fragile, fleeting melody that Kesha clung to. She kissed her niece's forehead, whispering softly, "Hold on, baby girl. Things are going to change. I promise." At Summit Health, every hallway seemed charged with electricity. Whispers followed her like shadows. Some colleagues offered sympathetic glances, others shot judging eyes that pierced deeper than any words could. Kesha kept her gaze low. Her mop felt heavier than ever, each swipe a reminder of yesterday's ordeal. Then came the shadow. Brenda Sterling appeared, impeccably dressed, gliding down the corridor like a predator. She stopped in front of Kesha, her smile serene, but her eyes sharp and calculating. "You know," Brenda said softly, each word deliberate, "you might want to be careful who you trust." Kesha froze. "What do you mean?" Brenda tilted her head, the faintest curl of malice on her lips. "Some people think they're helping. Others just make things worse." She turned and walked away, the sharp click of her heels echoing through the hall like a warning. A chill ran down Kesha's spine. During her break, she sat alone in the staff lounge, replaying Daniel's words over and over. Speaking the truth comes with a price. What did he mean? Could the clinic retaliate against her even after she'd proven her innocence? Her phone buzzed. A message. "Meet me after your shift. Important. Don't tell anyone." Kesha's heart thumped in her chest. What could be so urgent that Daniel wouldn't even trust her within the safety of the clinic? Evening arrived. The corridors narrower, darker, almost threatening. Brenda was gone, but her presence lingered, an invisible weight pressing against Kesha's shoulders. Kesha slipped out the back entrance the moment her shift ended. Snow, fine and biting, coated the alley in white. The familiar dark blue Toyota waited silently, as if it had been expecting her. Daniel sat behind the wheel, expression unreadable, eyes scanning the shadows. "You're here," he said simply. "Yeah," Kesha replied, tightening her coat, trying to steady her nerves. "What's so important?" He handed her a file, thick with documents. "I looked into the clinic's insurance records and internal reports. Yesterday wasn't an isolated incident. Equipment failures, falsified reports, employee intimidation. Brenda's actions are part of something bigger." Kesha's stomach twisted. What do you mean?" "They're powerful," Daniel said quietly, eyes sharp even in the dim light. "And now you're involved. You've seen too much. If you don't tread carefully, you could lose everything, not just your money, but your job, your home, even your niece's future." Her fingers trembled as she gripped the file. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because," he said, his voice soft but resolute, "I've seen people like you crushed for standing up to them. I won't let it happen again. But you have to be smart. The clinic won't forgive anyone who pushes back." Silence fell over the car, broken only by the crunch of snow under the tires. Kesha realized, in that moment, that life had handed her a choice: stay silent and safe, or fight back and risk everything. Her jaw set. Deep down, she knew the answer. She couldn't stay quiet.
When you decide to fight back, the world suddenly looks bigger and much darker. The Toyota glided through the dimly lit streets like a ghost, its headlights cutting through falling snow. Keisha sat rigid in the passenger seat, clutching the folder Daniel had given her as if it might disappear if she let go. Her hands were shaking, not from the cold this time, but from the truth. Inside the folder were copied maintenance logs, falsified incident reports, internal emails between Brenda Sterling and upper management. Dates had been altered, witness names erased, blame carefully redirected, always toward the weakest employee in the room. Employees like her. "This isn't just one accident," Daniel said quietly, his eyes fixed on the road. "Summit Health runs on fear. They silence people, they ruin reputations, and when someone gets hurt, they bury it." Keisha's throat tightened. Years of scrubbing floors, staying invisible, keeping her head down. And all this time, the clinic had been hiding rot behind clean white walls. "What do they do to people who speak up?" Keisha asked. Daniel didn't answer right away. That silence was worse than any words. Finally, he reached into the console and handed her a small USB drive. "Digital copies. If anything happens to you, this survives. Keep it with you. Always." The weight of it felt heavier than metal. They pulled into an abandoned parking garage at the edge of town. Concrete pillars rose like silent witnesses. The engine shut off, and suddenly, the world felt very still. "This is where you choose," Daniel said, turning toward her. "You can keep your head down, finish your shifts, pretend none of this exists, or," he paused, "you start fighting back. And if you do, understand this, they will retaliate." Keisha saw Brenda smile in her mind, the fine, the humiliation, the way power had been used like a weapon. Then she thought of Maya, sleeping peacefully, trusting her. Fear surged. Then something stronger pushed through it. "I won't stay quiet," Keisha said. Daniel nodded once. "Then watch everything, write everything. Names, times, faces. One mistake, and they'll crush you." Snow streaked past the garage entrance like shattered glass. Keisha stepped out of the car, clutching the USB, knowing there was no turning back. The next morning, Summit Health felt different. The hallways were brighter, but colder. Every camera felt like an eye. Every whisper felt aimed at her. Keisha worked silently, but her mind was sharp. She memorized blind spots, noted which supervisors avoided which corridors, watched how certain reports disappeared before reaching HR. And she wasn't alone. A nurse who avoided Brenda's office, a technician with shaking hands, a receptionist who flinched when management walked by. By the end of her shift, Keisha had something far more dangerous than evidence. She had potential witnesses. As she exited the clinic that night, snow crunching under her boots, her phone vibrated. Unknown number. "You should have stayed quiet." Keisha froze. Then another message appeared. "We're watching you." Her heart slammed against her ribs as she looked back at the glowing windows of Summit Health. The fight had begun, and the clinic had already made its first move. Keisha takes her first bold step against Summit Health without realizing how close the danger truly is. Will she expose the truth or become their next victim? The moment you speak up is the moment they start watching you. Stay with me, because from this point on, every decision Keisha makes will cost her something. Keisha felt it the second she walked into Summit Health that morning. Not colder, not louder, just different.
You know that feeling when a room knows your name, but no one says it out loud? She signed in at the staff desk, forcing her hands to stay steady. Her eyes drifted upward, toward the security cameras. Small black domes in the ceiling corners. Were they always tilted like that? Her pulse quickened. She pushed her cleaning cart down the main hallway. Conversation stopped. Two nurses glanced at her, then looked away. A maintenance worker gave her a barely noticeable nod. Supportive, afraid. That's when she knew this wasn't in her head. They knew something was happening. Then heels clicked against the floor. Brenda Sterling. Immaculate, confident, smiling. "Good morning, Keisha," Brenda said, too loudly. "Busy day ahead?" "Always," Keisha replied, eyes down. Brenda leaned in just enough for only her to hear. "I hear you've been asking questions." Keisha's heart skipped, but her voice didn't. "Just doing my job." Brenda smiled wider, colder. "I'd hate for misunderstandings to happen again." That wasn't advice, it was a warning. An hour later, everything changed. Keisha was cleaning an empty exam room when the door opened behind her. A security guard. "You need to come with me." "For what?" she asked. "Inspection," he said, flat, emotionless. Inspection wasn't the word that scared her. The escort did. They didn't take her to another room. They took her to HR. Dr. Thorne sat behind the desk, but this time he wasn't alone. A woman in a gray blazer, legal pad open, sharp eyes. Corporate. "We've received a complaint. Allegations of misconduct," Dr. Thorne said. Keisha felt the floor shift beneath her. "Misconduct?" Keisha asked. The woman spoke calmly, too calmly. "It's been reported that you accessed restricted areas without authorization." "That's not true," Keisha said firmly. "I clean those rooms every day." Dr. Thorne folded his hands. "Until this is resolved, you're being placed on unpaid suspension." One sentence, 3 words, her life cracked open. Unpaid, suspension. Maya's surgery, rent, food. "You can't do this," Keisha said, her voice breaking. "You have no proof." The woman closed her notebook. "That will be determined." Security walked her out. No explanation, no chance to speak, just whispers behind her. Outside, Keisha collapsed onto the concrete steps and broke. Her phone buzzed. Daniel. She answered instantly. "They suspended me." Silence. Then, "I was afraid of that." "They're trying to scare me," she cried, "and it's working." "No," Daniel said firmly. "They're panicking. That's different. Fear hides. Panic makes mistakes." He told her to meet him. Same garage, same secrecy. Daniel was already there, pacing. "They crossed a line," he said. "Unpaid suspension without cause is retaliation." "That doesn't help me pay rent," Keisha snapped. "I know," he said softly, then handed her a folder, thicker than before. "Tomorrow, we stop playing defense," he said. "Labor board, legal oversight, and if necessary, media." Keisha stared at the folder. "That means there's no going back." Daniel met her eyes. "There never was. Once the truth goes public, someone tries to bury it." Keisha thought of Maya, her limp, her smile, her trust. She straightened her shoulders. "Then let's finish it." End cliffhanger. Part 7 rehook. Keisha's story goes public, and Summit Health doesn't just fight back. The truth doesn't whisper, it explodes. Before we continue, make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell icon, because from this moment on, there is no going back. Keisha had never felt so exposed. She sat across from Daniel in a cramped conference room downtown, fluorescent lights buzzing like nervous insects above them. The table between them was covered, documents stacked high, photographs clipped together, timelines marked in red ink. Evidence. Not rumors, not feelings. Proof. Daniel broke the silence. This is enough. Keisha's throat tightened. Enough for what? Enough to force an investigation, he said. Enough to scare them. A beat. And if it doesn't scare them? She asked. Daniel didn't hesitate. Then they'll try to destroy you. Because when powerful people feel cornered, they don't apologize, they attack. An hour later, the complaint was officially filed. By evening, Summit Health was in chaos. Emails exploded, emergency meetings were called, lawyers were summoned. By the next morning, the story leaked. A janitor wrongfully blamed, retaliation, cover-ups inside an elite private clinic. Keisha's phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Unknown numbers, missed calls, voicemails she was too afraid to play. Social media followed fast. She's lying. She wants attention. Why didn't she speak up earlier? The truth had finally come out, and the world wasn't gentle about it. By noon, her face was everywhere. At home, Keisha sat motionless on the couch, television muted but flashing headlines across the screen. Maya sat beside her, coloring carefully inside the lines. Then, "Auntie?" Maya asked softly. Keisha turned. "Why are people saying your name on TV?" Keisha's heart cracked. She pulled Maya into her arms, holding her too tight. "Because I told the truth, and sometimes that makes people uncomfortable." But the truth had already reached the people who feared it most. That afternoon, Daniel called. "They fired Brenda," he said. Keisha blinked. "They what?" Effective immediately, Summit Health released a statement calling her actions isolated misconduct. Keisha let out a hollow laugh. So she's the villain now, and they're innocent? Exactly. Textbook damage control. For a moment, relief flickered. Then it died. That night, Keisha found an envelope slipped under her door. No stamp, no return address. Inside, one sheet of paper. Withdraw your complaint or lose everything. Her blood ran cold. And then the phone rang. Blocked number. She answered, her voice barely steady. "Hello?" A man spoke. Calm, controlled, dangerous. "Miss Vance, this situation has escalated unnecessarily." "Who is this?" "Someone who can make your life very difficult or very easy." Keisha's hands trembled. "Is this a threat?" "It's an offer," the man replied. "Drop the case. You'll receive a settlement, enough for your niece's surgery, enough to walk away clean." Keisha closed her eyes. They knew about Maya. "You have 24 hours, he continued. "After that, things get complicated." The line went dead. Justice now had a price, and it was personal. Daniel arrived an hour later. One look at her face told him everything. "They're scared. That's why they're offering money," he said after she told him. "And if I say no?" Keisha asked. Daniel didn't lie. "They'll dig into your past, your finances. They'll try to break you." Keisha looked down. Maya slept on the couch, clutching her stuffed bear, trusting her completely. "I need time," Keisha whispered. She had 24 hours to choose. Silence or justice. Safety or truth. And whatever she decided, nothing would ever be the same again. Keisha makes a choice that puts Maya directly in danger, and Summit Health shows just how far it's willing to go to silence her. What would you do if justice demanded the one person you love most? If you think you know the answer, stay with me, because this choice changes everything. Keisha didn't sleep. She sat at the kitchen table until dawn, the dim light above her flickering softly. In front of her lay the envelope, thin, ordinary, yet heavy enough to crush her chest. She didn't need to reread the message. the words were already carved into her mind. Withdraw the complaint or lose everything. Across the room, Maya slept on the couch, curled into a ball, her stuffed bear tucked under her chin. Her breathing was slow and peaceful, unaware of the storm gathering just beyond her dreams. Keisha watched her niece and felt something tear inside her. Everything she'd endured, every double shift, every skipped meal, every humiliation, had been for this child. And now, Maya was the leverage. Daniel's voice echoed in her head. They'll dig into your life. But they hadn't stopped there. They'd gone after her heart. At sunrise, Keisha walked Maya to school herself. She held her hand tighter than usual, fingers laced like she was afraid the world might steal her away. "Auntie," Maya giggled, "you're squeezing." Keisha forced a smile. "Sorry, sweetheart. Just making sure you don't float away." But her eyes scanned every car, every face. At the corner, a black SUV sat parked across the street. Engine running, windows dark. It didn't move. Maya skipped through the school gates, waving back cheerfully. Keisha waved too, then stood frozen as the SUV slowly rolled forward and disappeared around the block. Her knees nearly gave out. They're watching. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Keisha sat in the public library, pretending to read while her thoughts spiraled. If she took the money, Maya's surgery would happen immediately. No more pain, no more waiting. But silence had a price too. Her phone buzzed. "Daniel, did they contact you again?" he asked. "Not yet," Keisha whispered. "But they followed us, near the school." The pause on the line was heavy. "That means the clock's almost out." That evening, the call came. Blocked number. "You've had time," the man said calmly. "We can wire the funds tonight." Keisha's hands shook. "You're talking about a child." "I'm talking about solutions," he replied. "You walk away, she gets her surgery. Everyone wins." "And if I don't?" A sigh, almost bored. "Tomorrow becomes unpleasant." The call ended. Keisha collapsed onto the couch, breath ragged. Maya climbed into her lap, wrapping small arms around her waist. "Auntie, are we okay?" Keisha pressed her forehead to Maya's hair. "We will be," she whispered. "I promise." A knock came at the door. Daniel. His face was grim. I traced the calls. Legal firm tied directly to Summit Health's board. "So it's real," said Keisha. "It's worse," he replied. "But there's more." He handed her a printed email. Another employee, a nurse, willing to testify publicly. "But only if you stand your ground," Daniel said. "If you back down, she vanishes." Keisha looked at the clock. 2 hours left. Money for Maya, or truth for everyone. Her phone rested in her palm. And this time, she didn't hesitate. One choice can save a life, or burn your world to the ground. If you think courage always feels powerful, wait until you hear what it costs. Keisha stood alone in the kitchen, her phone glowing in her hand. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. Tick, tick, tick. Each second felt like a verdict being read. On one side, money, silence, safety. On the other, truth, risk, and a future she couldn't control. Down the hall, Maya slept peacefully, unaware that strangers in expensive offices had turned her life into a bargaining chip. Keisha walked to her niece's doorway and leaned against the frame. Maya's chest rose and fell slowly, her face relaxed, innocent. For a moment, the fear almost won. Almost. "I'm doing this for you," Keisha whispered, "even if you don't understand it yet." She turned back, squared her shoulders, and dialed Daniel. "I'm not taking the deal," she said the moment he answered. "I won't sell the truth." Silence. Then Daniel exhaled, slow and heavy. "Okay," he said. "Then we move fast, no hesitation." By sunrise, the fallout began. The nurse, Rachel, stepped into the light. Her interview aired across local news stations, her hands shaking as she described falsified safety reports, pressure from management, and the fear that kept staff quiet for years. By noon, the state announced a formal investigation into Summit Health. And suddenly, the narrative shifted. Keisha wasn't a troublemaker anymore. She was a whistleblower, a guardian, a woman who refused to be erased. But power doesn't surrender quietly. That afternoon, Keisha tried to buy groceries. Transaction declined. She checked her banking app. Account temporarily restricted. Her breath caught. Minutes later, an email appeared. Notice of eviction pending review. Her hands shook so badly she had to sit down. They weren't arguing anymore. They were starving her out. Daniel arrived within the hour, jaw tight. "They're freezing assets tied to you, legal pressure, delay tactics." "I can't lose the apartment," Keisha said, panic flooding her chest. "I can't drag Maya through this." "You won't," Daniel said firmly, "but understand this. They're escalating because they're scared." That night, as Keisha tucked Maya into bed, bright headlights swept across the living room wall. She froze. A car idled across the street. Engine running, lights on, watching. Keisha locked every door, pulled the curtains tight, and forced her breathing to slow. Her phone buzzed. Blocked number. "I know who this is," Keisha said calmly, though her heart hammered. A low chuckle. "You made a very expensive mistake." "I made the right one." "Then tomorrow," the man said coldly, "you lose more than money." The call ended. Keisha slid down the wall, her legs weak. There was no turning back now. Minutes later, Daniel called again. "They filed a countersuit, defamation. They're going after your credibility, your past, everything." Keisha closed her eyes. "So this is it?" she whispered. "No," Daniel replied. "This is what happens right before the truth comes out." Keisha looked toward Maya's room, then at her clenched fists. Fear was still there, but so was resolve. And this time, she wasn't standing alone. The truth can stay buried for years, until the moment it decides to fight back. If you think justice moves fast, wait until you see how hard power fights to stay hidden. The courtroom felt colder than any winter Kesha had ever survived. She sat beside Daniel at the narrow wooden table, her hands clasped so tightly her fingers ached. Across the room, Summit Health's legal team occupied nearly 2 full rows, tailored suits, calm faces, and stacks of documents designed to intimidate. Brenda Sterling wasn't there, but her shadow was. The judge entered. Everyone stood. "This court is now in session." The silence that followed was suffocating. Summit Health's lead attorney rose first. His voice was smooth, confident, practiced. "This case," he began, "is about accountability. A careless employee damaged costly equipment and then fabricated a narrative to escape responsibility." Kesha felt every word land like a blade. "She is emotional, financially unstable, and motivated by money," he continued, "not truth." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Daniel stood slowly when it was his turn, calm, unshaken. "We will show," he said evenly, "that Miss Kesha Vance was falsely accused, financially punished, threatened to silence, and retaliated against when she refused to lie." The judge nodded once. "Proceed." The first witness was Rachel. The nurse's hands trembled as she spoke about falsified safety reports, intimidation, and warnings never to question senior staff. Her voice cracked as she described years of fear. Then Summit Health attacked. "You waited years," their attorney pressed. "Why speak now?" Rachel swallowed. "Because someone reminded me I wasn't alone." Every head turned toward Kesha. Then came the footage. Daniel approached the screen. "Your Honor, we submit security footage from Procedure Room 3. The screen flickered. Gasps echoed. Brenda's elbow struck the machine. The equipment tipped. Kesha stood frozen, nowhere near it. The truth played out in silence. Summit Health's attorney jumped to his feet. "This footage is selective." "Sit down," the judge said sharply. For the first time, panic cracked the opposing table. But Summit Health wasn't finished. They called a surprise witness, a former landlord. He spoke of late payments, financial stress, unstable housing. Kesha's pulse thundered. They weren't disproving facts. They were assassinating her character. Daniel leaned in. "They're desperate." Then, the courtroom doors opened. A man in a gray suit walked briskly down the aisle and handed the bailiff a sealed envelope. The judge read it. Her expression shifted. "Mr. Wright," she said slowly, "are you familiar with this document?" "Yes, Your Honor," Daniel replied. Summit Health's attorney stood. "What document?" The judge's gaze was icy. An internal email chain between Summit Health board members discussing coercion, hush payments, and explicit threats involving a minor. The room froze. Kesha's breath vanished. The judge continued, "This court will recess while these materials are reviewed." Outside the courtroom, Kesha's knees nearly buckled. Daniel steadied her. "They didn't know I had that." "You mean," her voice shook, "this could actually be over?" Daniel nodded. "It already is. They just haven't realized it yet." Kesha closed her eyes, thinking of Maya, her surgery, her future. For the first time in a long, long while, hope didn't feel dangerous. Sometimes justice doesn't shout. It lands quietly, and then the ground starts to shake. Stay with me, because what happens next rewrites everything Kesha fought for. The courtroom fell silent as everyone returned from recess. Not the calm kind of silence, the heavy kind. The kind that presses against your chest. Kesha sat perfectly still, her pulse roaring in her ears, every second stretched painfully long. Across the aisle, Summit Health's legal team looked different now. Jackets loosened, eyes darting, confidence replaced by calculation. The judge entered and took her seat. No expression, no delay. She adjusted her glasses and looked down at the bench. "After reviewing all submitted materials," she began, "including video footage and internal correspondence, this court has reached a decision." Kesha's hands trembled in her lap. "Summit Health," the judge continued, "is found to have engaged in retaliatory actions, wrongful dismissal, and deliberate intimidation of an employee, as well as indirect threats involving a minor." A sharp inhale echoed through the room. Kesha felt the words hit her like a wave. "This court orders immediate reinstatement of Miss Kesha Vance," she said, "with full back pay, compensation for emotional distress, and complete coverage of all medical expenses related to her dependent's surgery." For a moment, Kesha couldn't breathe. Maya's surgery. Covered. Paid. Safe. And further, her voice firm now, "This court refers Summit Health's executive board to the state attorney's office for criminal investigation." The gavel came down. Bang. It was finished. Outside the courthouse, chaos erupted. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions from every direction. "Kesha, how does it feel? Do you forgive the clinic? What happens next?" Kesha stood frozen for a moment, the noise washing over her. Then she stepped forward. "I didn't do this to win," she said calmly. "I did it so people like me don't get crushed just for telling the truth." Daniel stood beside her, saying nothing. His expression said enough. That night, the apartment felt warmer. Kesha tucked Maya into bed, smoothing her hair back gently. "When's my surgery?" Maya asked sleepily. Kesha smiled, tears slipping free. "Soon, sweetheart, very soon." Maya yawned. "You're my hero."
Weeks passed, and Summit Health unraveled. Executives resigned, investigations expanded, policies were rewritten under public pressure. And Keisha? She never went back to pushing a mop. Instead, she was offered a role in compliance, training staff, protecting workers, ensuring no one else would be silenced the way she was. As she signed the offer letter, Daniel watched quietly. "You earned this," he said. Keisha shook her head. "We earned it." She stepped outside into the sunlight, breathing freely for the first time in years. Peace settled in. But far away, in a quiet office, a phone rang. A voice answered softly. "This isn't over."
Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers and finally lets you breathe. Before we dive in, hit subscribe and tap the bell icon because stories like this remind us why hope still matters. The phone buzzed late at night. Kesha, half asleep on the couch, felt Maya curl beside her. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw an unknown number flashing on the screen. "Miss Vance," a calm male voice said. "This is Assistant District Attorney Raymond Cole. I'm calling to inform you, formally, that criminal charges have been filed against Brenda Sterling." Kesha sat up straight, disbelief mixing with exhaustion. "She confessed," he continued. "Falsifying reports, tampering with equipment records, perjury. She admitted she pushed the machine and intentionally framed you." Silence. Finally. The weight she'd carried for a year, the fear, the anger, the helplessness, slid off her shoulders. "Thank you," she whispered. No tears, just relief. The next morning, sunlight poured into the apartment as Maya practiced walking down the hallway. Slow, careful steps, but steady. "Look, Auntie!" Maya laughed. "I didn't limp." Kesha ran forward, scooping her up, laughing and crying all at once. For the first time, she realized that the fight wasn't just for herself. It was for Maya and for every quiet voice silenced by fear. 2 weeks later, Kesha stood in a bright hospital hallway, not as a cleaner, not invisible, but as a guardian who had survived and conquered the storm. Maya's surgery was a success. Doctors said she'd run freely within months. Outside the recovery room, Daniel leaned against the wall, arms crossed, calm, proud. "You did this," he said softly. "I survived it," he smiled. "Same thing." Months passed. Life didn't become perfect, but it became fair. Kesha moved into a better apartment closer to Maya's school. She took evening classes in healthcare administration and began speaking at workers' rights seminars, telling her story so others wouldn't stay silent. One afternoon, leaving work, she noticed a familiar figure sitting alone across the street. It was Brenda. No makeup, no heels, just a tired woman staring at the ground. Their eyes met. Brenda rose slowly, walked toward her. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said quietly. "I just needed to say, you were stronger than me." Kesha studied her carefully, calm, steady. "I hope you learn from that. I already have." And she walked away. No anger, no speech, just peace. Sometimes the real victory isn't revenge. It's walking away without losing yourself. That evening, Kesha tucked Maya into bed. "Auntie," Maya asked sleepily, "when I grow up, I want to help people like you." Kesha kissed her forehead. "You already do, sunshine." Later, standing by the window, city lights glowing below, Kesha finally understood. Losing her job didn't destroy her. Being lied about didn't break her. Being underestimated didn't end her. It revealed her. Because sometimes the moment you think everything has been taken from you is the moment you discover who you really are. Final viewer message. If Kesha's story touched your heart, hit subscribe, press the bell icon, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. More inspiring stories are waiting. Because even in the darkest moments, justice finds a way.